Hello everybody. Today I want to do a bit of a comparison between the Creality Otter Lite with the bridge and the Einstar Vega all-in-one device. There's been a lot of discussions and questions in various groups about what scanner to buy and what are the pros and cons of different scanners. And obviously just recently with the original Lite and the original being released as all-in-one standalone laser scanners, I thought I'd focus on the infrared side from the sort of a pretty cheap option in the Creality Otter Lite and the Einstar Vega being more expensive. As you can see on the screen, the Otter Lite is Australian dollars, about 1,039 at the moment, with the Vega coming in at 1,999 US dollars, which is the equivalent of about $2,750, $2,760 Australian. So the Vega is around about 2.5 times, just over, more expensive than the Otter Lite. So on the face of it, you might say this isn't a fair comparison. However, when you factor in the Otter Lite does not come with an onboard computer and you need to connect it to an iPhone or a smartphone or an iPad or something like that, when you factor in the cost of the iPhone, we're actually getting to parity in terms of overall expense. However, obviously most people already have a phone, so the Creality Otter Lite does end up being a cheaper option. But when you look at the various stats, you can see that the Otter Lite and the Vega have very similar supposed, output quality. So the Vega has more RAM, it's all on board processing, it's an all-in-one computer, but both claim to do a 0.05 mil accuracy. The other factor that's really important for my assessment today, for me, I travel to my clients quite a lot to do scanning as opposed to having parts sent to me, which means I need a device that I can travel with. Now, obviously with a laptop, you can do that, but having an all-in-one device really can mean you can throw it in the back of the car, travel to where you need to do, take a scan and come home, process it there. It also means if you, like me, are going somewhere and your client goes, oh, by the way, I've got something I'd like you to scan, that means you've got something handy ready to go. I traveled with my Einstar Vega recently overseas, which was quite an adventure, as no one had seen one before and I kept getting stopped at security asking what it was. But there were no issues. I got through. I just had to explain it. So pro tip, if you do travel with one of your scanners, take it out of your bag, put it into the tub separately and open it up so they can see what it is. Otherwise, you're going to be stopped everywhere you go. Again, here we go. So we've got the Vega saying high def mode 0.05 mil. And the same accuracy with the Vega. Both take images as well. The Einstar has a better 48 megapixel camera resolution, which is a bit better, as far as I can tell anyway. And the other thing that's really interesting is the Vega does have more cameras on the device than the Vega. But again, you're paying a lot more for it. So what does that mean in terms of quality? So let's, before we get to the quality, let's have a chat about what you get. So in both cases, both devices come in a really nice travel case. That's the Vega. It's firm without being hard. Feels really good quality. The zips are good. Creality has the same. It's really, really nice. It's well packaged. There's plenty of space in there to add things. They both come with calibration boards and a heap of markers, so you can do marker connections. And what are the actual devices like? So my Vega is really good, comes in a little silicon case. So it's pretty heavy for considering it's got a computer built in. It's got a really good screen on the back, which is nice and easy to see. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of camera lenses on the front. By comparison, the Vega has far fewer cameras, but it feels well built and well made. So one of the key differences with the Otter Lite, this is the bridge which houses the battery. This requires that you attach it like so, right? So we end up with a nice solid grip. It's nice and easy to maneuver, and you have a clip on the back where you put your phone. This feels lighter than the Vega for obvious reasons, and I would suggest ergonomically having a handle like this does make scanning a bit easier, particularly for long periods or if you're in the heat and you start to get a bit sweaty. I found the Vega a little bit awkward because occasionally my fingers would get in front of the camera, or I'd have to hold it, to reach in certain ways, which was a little awkward. But I will say you can buy a handle that doubles as a tripod for the Vega, but I'm doing like for like comparison straight out of the box. So straight out of the box, I would say for comfort and ease of, and just ergonomics, the Otter is a little bit nicer. In terms of quality, they both feel really well made. And another little win for the Otter Lite is it comes with a good USB cable, USB-C, that plugs into the side and screws into the device, meaning that it's a really solid connection when you're using it. And it needs to do that because the Otter Lite can also be used to plug directly into your computer as a computer-based scanner, so you get better frame rates and things. The Einstar can only be used as a standalone device. So you can't plug it into your computer and scan with it in that way. It's one or the other. The other thing I will say, the Einstar Vega, because of the silicone cover, the USB attachment is not the strongest. It comes out pretty easily. But that's, again, a minor thing. If you push it in and leave the device down, it's pretty good. But these are minor things. So we're going to dive into a few scans now and the software and talk about how to get things off your device and onto the computer. So with the Otter Lite, there are two ways to get information off your phone and into the software. The first is via Wi-Fi code and transferring via Wi-Fi. Now, unfortunately for me, where I sit, I don't have a good Wi-Fi signal. I've actually got my computer connected via Ethernet, which means nice fast internet, but not really good for Wi-Fi transfer. So I have to use the Apple file transfer protocols. Now, one of the negatives is while it's copying, I don't get a status bar. Now, I don't know why, but it just doesn't happen, and that's an Apple thing rather than a Creality thing. So what happens if you connect your Einstar Vega? It comes up with the option to connect to the computer, and it automatically detects what's on your computer. So I can click on this. I can see a little preview, right? You can see there's a lot of junk going around, and I can just import it into the workspace or into the model library. But we'll click import to workspace. I'm going to just create, which we'll put it into this KCAR one, and you can see it going. So it's not the fastest, but it's not too bad when you consider the size of the file. That's 11.2 gigabytes being transferred over USB-C. All right, so that's done, and it automatically loads the model into your in the project view, and you can see I have my scan here, which was done relatively quickly and is pretty good. So I'm going to compare a couple of these scans shortly, so I won't spoil the surprise. But I have, a couple of scans of a KCAR truck, which is being converted into a bit of a drag car of some fun. So the software has a lot of similarities. They're both pretty easy to use. So I've imported a scan here of a LS1 accessory drive. I'm just going to select by holding down Shift, dragging around, hit delete, and again This is exactly the same in Einstar software, and it's nice and easy. Now, one thing in both, again, pieces of software, if you want to save what you've done, so you don't lose your edits, you need to click Save Edit, and there we go. So we've got a few scans here that I need to tidy up. So I took a few scans of this part just to see what we could get. You can see in this section I lost tracking a bit and had a bit of a mess, so I'm going to have to cut that out and fix it. Get rid of some of these loose parts because I've got multiple scans of this object from different sides, but I want to get the best possible outcome, and that's something that's really important to remember when you're scanning. Is it's critical to take your time and get as many scans from different angles as you can, and you don't have to capture everything in one massive scan. You can take multiple scans and then align them in the software afterwards, and we'll see the automatic alignment function for both has been to date really good, and we'll see how it goes with this object shortly. So I'll save that and I'll keep editing the rest. A feature that's really good on the Einstar Vega is the ability to pause your scan and rewind the scan. It tracks it as you go. So if you start to lose tracking and get a bit of a mess, you can actually go backwards in time and pick up from where the scan was good. You cannot, I couldn't see how to do that in the Otter Lite, which means you either have to accept a bit of bad data, or you need to start your scan again. And here's a case in point. I have the spout here. I lost tracking when doing this smooth surface, and it ended up spinning and scanning and placing the spout in the wrong spot again. Now, by that stage, I'd already scanned all this and I didn't want to lose that data, so I've ended up having to just sort of put up with it and get rid of it in post-processing. So I will say that some of the functionality in the Vega is very helpful, can save you a heap of time, particularly if you're towards the end of a really big scan and then the Otter Lite buggers up. You can't go backwards in time and pick it up again. So that can be frustrating, but I guess again, it's another reason to scan in small chunks and then align later. And one of the other factors with any of these things, and this is for both scanners, if you're scanning in bright daylight, it can be very tricky to see your screen, whether it's a phone or this device, because you're shielding it, and you may miss errors. So good quality selection tools and editing tools is important. Take your time and be precise. Now, you can also delete things once it's meshed, so if there are a few bits like along here which are really hard to get to, they might actually come up a little bit easier to select once they're in mesh form. And of course, you can bring things into Blender or other stuff like that and use the selection and delete tools there. But a really good one to try and minimize is little floaties on the edges of things. They just tend to come up not very well. So yeah, take your time, accept that this is not a really super duper fast process if you want good results, and you won't be disappointed. So once you're happy with your cleaning up, getting rid of the bits you don't want, in Creality you go through a fusion process, then you can align. I'm just going to leave everything at defaults for both bits of software, and we'll see how it comes out. So one of the things I will say is that another key difference between the two devices is that the Vega has an additional tracking mode, and probably, in my opinion, has better tracking overall. So the Vega, you can track using markers, you can track using features, you can track using textures, which is something that the Otter Lite doesn't have. And you can actually turn all of them on and use all of those different systems to enhance your tracking. So that's really powerful and really helpful on complex or smooth surfaces and things like that. Having said that, the Otter Lite has a nifty feature where you can scan or an object initially with markers, which are global markers. It then uses that to record the general layout of everything, and then you can scan again using your geometry mode, and it uses the markers to help just align things and get a good result. So both have really good tracking and good solutions. I would say the Vega has better tracking overall, but again, you're spending 2,500 Australian versus 1,000 Australian, so that's fair enough. So this is off an LS engine. Both this and on the Vega, the Einstar Vega and the Otter Lite were done fairly quickly. I didn't overdo it. I tried to just create something pretty quickly that would give you a good indication of the results. And you can see here I've got 1, 2, 3, like 4 scans. From different angles, and we're missing a few bits. There's a few blobby sections that didn't quite get enough detail. But if you were trying to build, for example, a bracket or something coming off this section on this particular object or anything else, you've got what you need to make it really, really well. One thing I do like with the Vega is you can really clearly see all the numbers and the serial numbers and the text on the part, right down to seeing the thread on the bolts holding things together, which is pretty impressive for an infrared scanner. And again, you can see the casting marks on the object, and this object is fairly rough surface, so this is pretty true to how it actually looks. So that's a really good result, and I'm super happy with it. And when we go to the Otter Lite, we have a similar kind of outcome. It's a little bit less sharp, but again, the shape's there, the position of the threads are there. The text is there, but it isn't as clear. So again, what I'd say is that the Einstar Vega seems to be slightly more detailed than the Otter Lite. If you are on a budget, the Otter Lite is giving you everything you need to be able to accurately model parts, to recreate things, but don't expect to get it has the casting marks, but they're not as clear. It has the text, it's not as clear. So you would never realistically print directly from either of these two objects, but the results are comparable. Again, the Einstar Vega seems to have a slightly clearer and crisper outcomes or output, but when we're talking if you wanted to build something, a tube or a pipe or an adapter coming off this, you absolutely could achieve that with your Otter Lite. So for the money, I would suggest that the Otter Lite and the Vega are both really good products. You can see here the same part, and there's not a lot in it between them. In terms of use, I will say that the Einstar is a bit easier to use, particularly having the rewind function and being able to go back when the scan loses a little bit of alignment. Being able to roll the scan back is very helpful. I guess what I would advocate is, if you're on a budget and you're looking for a scanner that you can take around with you and rapidly scan objects that you can use, you can work from engine bays, big objects, then the Otter Lite will definitely do what you want. If you want something similar and you've got a little bit more money, then I would also say, you know, the Vega's a really, really powerful and good option. Neither of them are as good or going to be as good as a laser scanner, but then you're doubling the price to get a Ridgel, and 1.5 times the price for a Ridgel Lite. So I definitely support both scanners and think both have very similar software. Their alignment functions are very good. The key is with both, but particularly with the Otter Lite, is you need to be patient. All right. With the Otter Lite and an iPhone 17, I was getting consistent 15 frames a second. I ran into no memory issues. I had minimal alignment issues, and when it did lose alignment, it rapidly got it back. But I was very methodical and very careful and slow in my scan, and I did exactly the same thing with the Einstar. The result is a little better. Right, so let's dive straight into comparing scans of the Ellis engine bay. This is quite a large scan. There was no markers involved, and obviously everything in here was black. Both scanners did a really good job. You can see this is the Einstar Vega. For both scanners, I really made sure that I did like-to-like comparisons. So I did a large scale scan, which is a general overview, and then I also did some high detailed scans and then merged the two using the alignment function in both software. What I'll say is that both have produced usable results and both have done a really good job and were pretty easy to use and resulted in some very clear outcomes. So if we look here, this is the Einstar Vega. And this is something I plan to do, I'm building some valve covers and then I'm going to print them. So the Vega has all the bolt holes, the rails, the general shape, but you can see the screws are not super detailed, but everything I need is there, and that is excellent, and it was very simple. And I will note to draw your attention to the not massively detailed, that's the air conditioning pump. And that was the result of the large scale or the large format scanning. The high detailed scan on the rails here, where you can see the bolt holes, that was merged really, really well into the large, less detailed scan. So Einstar Vega did a really good job. That is totally usable and has everything I need to make what I need. So let's look at the Creality scan of the same thing. So again, I made sure I didn't play into strengths and weaknesses of either scanner. I literally just did the same thing to compare like with like. And again, this is a good scan. You can see this is the detail on the large scale of the air conditioning pump. It's a bit more blobby, a little less detailed, but it's there. Again, I took high-res scans of the fuel rails, and you can see where the bolt holes are. And you could work with this, absolutely. What I will say is that everything is a little less defined on the Otter Lite, but it picked up everything commendably. There was no real tracking loss. When it did lose tracking on one occasion, it picked it up again very quickly. So again, a totally usable result. What I will say though is that's merging the two scans. That's merging high detail and the low detail. If you look just at the high detail scan, it's really come up nicely. You can see all the bolt holes really clearly. We can see the screws. everything has worked really, really well. And so I think it's really interesting, whereas the main comparison has been combining high detail scans with the less detailed scans into one object, which I think the Einstar does cope with a little bit better. It's also interesting just to see the high detailed scans of the Ellis engine bay, particularly the fuel rails. Things to note are the Phillips head screwdrivers, the clarity of the holes, the smoothness of the rail, and the casting marks. As you can see, even the pattern on the cables is pretty clear, and we have a pretty clear image here of that little connector. So when we switch over to our Einstar, now this scan I did initially first, and probably didn't spend quite as much time on it, but again, in terms of the actual detail, it's very, very similar. We've got nice bolt holes, they're nice and clear. You can see the marks, or the pattern on the cables. And you can, I think it's interesting around the bolt holes, the Phillips head screws or bolts on the top, and these particular holes in the bracket. You can just see it just seems slightly softer in the on the Otter Lite, but really there's very little in it. They're both really good. The deficiencies in blank areas were just my scanning rather than the scanner not penetrating. I just spent a little bit more time with the Creality for this one, and that was just accidental really. I didn't intend to, but even things like here we are, this is a nice comparison, this little section here, and we look over here, they're very comparable, really, really good. So in terms of output, at high detail mode, as we saw with the LS1 accessory at the front, the Einstar seems capable of picking up detail just a little bit better, a little sharper, and we saw that with the serial numbers and some of those sorts of things. Once we get to large objects like this, again, as I keep saying, both scanners produce very usable results. You could absolutely work from these. In terms of ease of use, again, the Einstar is a bit better, a bit easier to use, and of course the software in the Einstar is a smidge better. But if you're on a budget, I highly recommend the Otter Lite. And if you've got a bit more, you really can't go wrong with the Einstar. There's not much to separate these two scanners when you factor in the cost. So in terms of software, one thing I will say is this, and I mentioned this earlier, but this align function is really, really handy. It's not going to get you perfect alignment, but being able to get something really close to where you want it before you export it is very helpful. It just means that you can use features in the object. So for example, let's say we want to take this line here as our vertical plane. We can really try and key it in and get close to that before we export it, and that saves a bit of stuffing around when you move to other software, because you've got a very close alignment before you even export it. And why that's important is if you're trying to model this object from scratch using Fusion or Blender or whatever it is that's your software of choice, having it lined up to the correct axis, it just helps the process, makes it all a bit easier rather than having it at weird angles. Unfortunately, Creality does not have that option. So I can measure things, that's fine, but I can't align the object before I export it. So it'll just come as it comes, and then I'll have to use external software to really sort of dial it in. Again, not a big deal because you can do that in Blender or other Cloud Compare or other software that you want to use. So my final thoughts are, yes, the Einstar is a better scanner, but for the money, if you're on a budget, I would highly recommend the Otter Lite because it will do everything that the Einstar can do, just about, and you can work with it, particularly if you're doing large parts where you don't need, casting marks and, numbers and things like that. So neither scanner would I recommend that you just scan an object and print that object without any modification or editing. But like me, if you're, for example, where I did the cold air intake, I scanned the wheel arches and the engine bay to make something fit. And I did that with the Otter Lite and it came out perfect. Since then, I've also done work with the VK Holden Commodore, where we had a drag car that needed a light delete so that we could have a funnel pushing the air where the headlight was straight into the turbo intake. And the Vega did a great job of that too. So yeah, both are really good scanners. I highly recommend them each. I think for me the next step is to get a laser scanner and just see the difference. But for what it's worth, both are good scanners. The software for both is easy to use, pretty straightforward, but it is not an all-in-one solution. You do need to do some post-processing. You'll need to use Fusion or Blender to recreate the object, unless it's something really basic. So all in all, fantastic scanners, useful software, they're portable, they're really effective at what they do. So if you've got the money and you want something like this, go the Vega. If you're starting out and you really want something that's not too expensive but does good results, go the Otter Lite. I hope this has been helpful and you've enjoyed the scans I've done. And yeah, leave me a message in the comments. Tell me about some of the jobs you've done and how you found each scanner and whether one has been better for you than the other. Otherwise, happy scanning and like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.